This is a seminar to help you better understand podcasting, how to set one up, what they cost, in terms of equipment, potentially if you haven't got anything to start off with, as well as some helpful feedback from people doing it, the income streams available, and what you can do in return with the content you're creating, to turn this into a lifestyle where you could consider it a full-time job. So let's start off and define here what a podcast actually is, how they started, how they came about. So using our good old friend Wikipedia, according to Wikipedia, a podcast is a program made available in a digital format for download over the internet. For example, an episodic series of digital audio or video files that a user can download to a personal device to listen at a time of their choosing. So these days you can use podcasts in stuff like Apple Music, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, various other video streaming protocols. The BBC have got podcasts, Sky have got podcasts, all your favorite celebrities are podcasting. It really has become, a very popular tool to work from and create. For any business owners out there too, they're also excellent marketing tools, and it's a great way to do something called passive sales. So again, if you're trying to sell products and you're looking for new ways to sell as well, a podcast can be a great solution. Pretty much every industry and trade is starting to include them now. And obviously for people that are passionate about what they do, it's a great place for everyone to come and share knowledge and experience and to help others who may not have so much knowledge and experience. So I'm not going to spend ages on text here. I just wanted to kind of define it simply. However, this video here is not even 3 minutes and explains a lot of the history as well as what to expect. So if you're not fully understanding what a podcast is, this video should be really clear on how they started, have come around, and what a podcast can be now.
15 years, podcasts have gone from mainly a niche market to mainstream. There's a world of info and entertainment for people of all interests, so listen up. We have Podcast 101 on the lowdown.
There are over 500,000 podcasts in existence, but that doesn't mean we all know what they are.
A podcast is simply a piece of audio, a story or an interview or a documentary series that you can download and listen to whenever you want.
Chris Bannon, Chief Content Officer at Stitcher, a podcast app, is here with a lesson on podcasts. First, where did they come from?
Podcasting has been around for more than a decade, but I would say that it became really popular. It exploded in 2014 with the publication of a series called Serial.
I definitely understand that someone could look at this and say, oh man, he must be lying. It's so coincidental.
And since then, there's now something for everyone, from shows about true crime to news.
From the New York Times, I'm Michael Barbaro. This is The Daily.
And from comedy to fantasy.
What's this one's name? Logan. But he goes by another name as well. Wolverine.
Today, as many as 100 million people are listening each month to the 18.5 million available episodes from the 700,000 podcasts out there. But unlike AM/FM radio, podcasts play through apps. So here's how to tune in.
Stitcher has built the first widely available Android app. So if Apple has an app, it's built into the iPhone. Spotify is getting into the podcasting business in a big way.
You can listen on your smart device through the app or on a computer from the website.
If you click that little subscribe button, it will make sure to feed you new episodes of the show.
Which leads us to the third part of the lesson. What are some of today's fan favorites?
Right now, I think there's never been more variety in what's popular in podcasting. Dirty John is a series that came out a couple of years ago.
Whether to intimidate people or to impress them with his dark glamour, he bragged frequently about his underworld ties.
This true crime podcast is also a hit series on Bravo.
I'm John.
People like Conan O'Brien, the TV talk show host and comedian, have gotten into podcasting in a big way.
Conan tends to pop his peas every time he says podcast.
Podcast. This makes the engineer crazy.
Oprah, Dr. Phil.
The hardest part is choosing where to start. That's today's lesson in Podcast 101 on the lowdown.
So hopefully a nice helpful snapshot. Sorry to use an American resource, but obviously podcasts have been around for a lot longer than people perceive. They're not that hard to put together in terms of like a process, and obviously Gold Seal projects specialize historically around music technology. So podcasts are probably the easiest part of that. You know, you don't need lots, you just need a simple microphone. Often these have USB cables in them in today's current kind of market for buying that equipment, which means you don't need something previous before, which was, you know, an audio interface, so like a box to be able to plug all the different cables in. Now you can just plug a USB cable into a microphone, which has its own kind of device in it, and record the sound from that. To define a podcast historically, at the time a video like this was done, a podcast would normally be audio, and then YouTubing or some sort of visual would be considered to be video content. However, we now have video podcasts as well. They're probably stepping on both of the lines, and you're going to see as we go through this seminar, we're going to explain the difference between the two, starting to understand audio podcasts first, then video. We're not saying which one is right or wrong. We're just trying to help you understand them and think about the type of relevance. The one thing I would pick up on, though, is sticking to facts and statistics. 87% of engagement online occurs through a video these days. So potentially you might want to think about video podcasting if you want to get a good audience to start off with. People just like visuals. It means they're living the same experience with you. Okay, don't hear that and say that you have to. Remember, a lot of this journey will be about experimenting, just pointing out some of the obvious. So if you can do that, and these days, you know, if you have one of these, okay, you can add that visual very easy and cost effective. You haven't got to go out and spend loads and loads of money on high-end cameras. As you become more successful and potentially generate an income from a podcast, at the end of that, you could potentially reinvest to upgrade your visuals if you feel that's an important part. But again, we're not trying to make you have to see lots of money to set up businesses. Quite often these short videos are to show you can start just with a bit of determination and no money in your pocket. And podcasting is definitely something you can do for that. You know, being honest, if you use something like the audio recorder app on your phone and just start recording yourself and talking, you're already creating content that could be used. You don't have to go and use the microphones, but you're going to see other people explaining that. We feel this is a really good kind of summary video, and it's going to explain the majority. So it's only 8 minutes long. I'm going to play as much of this as I feel is relevant, and then you're going to see I'm going to start finding some other helpful web links as well. And then as we progress through some of the other videos that are available at the top here, you'll see towards the end we've got some helpful links for you to be able to see and purchase equipment. And again, we're not saying you have to purchase that specifically. We're just trying to make this as helpful and educational to find places online and share that information with you to make your own decision based off the information we share. All right. So here's another helpful video to better explain podcasting.
Be so overwhelming. What gear do you choose? How do you edit it? And how do you distribute it to the world? We just started a brand new podcast here at Think Media, and I want to break down 3 easy steps for you getting your podcast started this year. We're going to be breaking down the gear, the editing, and the distribution so that your podcast can get out to the world.
You gotta just... If anyone's confused by the word distribution, this is just making it available through the internet to the world. Yeah. Press record.
Hey, what's up? It's Heather Torres here with Think Media, where we help you build your influence with online video. And on this channel, we do YouTube tips, video tutorials, as well as podcast videos just like this. So if you're new here, consider subscribing. We love podcasting here at Think Media. It's such a great way for you to go deeper with your audience, create longer form content, and be able to grow your influence on.
So longer form content just means be able to give people content that makes them still consider you and your brand through a different format.
Line. And we're going to walk through a beginner setup so that you can actually start podcasting today. You don't need a lot of things to get started. I'm going to walk you through these 3 steps. I'll be talking about a lot of different gear, so I'll link everything down below. So if you want to go and check out that piece of gear or the videos that we reference, everything will be linked down in the description box below. Number 1 is the gear. Getting started with your podcast is all about the audio. We're going to be talking strictly about the audio type of podcasting. So the first piece of gear that you need is probably something you already have. You can actually use the onboard microphone from your iPhone, or you can use the headphones that come with the microphone to record a podcast. Now, I don't recommend doing this outside or in an echoey room. You can actually take your phone into a closet and record a quality podcast. So You can get started today with what you have, but I'm gonna cover 2 other microphones that I think are great if you are just a beginner. My next 2 options, if you have a few dollars that you wanna invest into your podcast setup, would be the Lavalier mic, the Deity Lavalier, and this USB microphone. Now, what I like about both of these options is that you can actually plug them both into your smartphone or your computer. So depending on where you're actually recording your podcast or how you want to actually collect the audio, you have these 2 different options. Now, the lavalier microphone can connect right to your shirt and you can record either into your smartphone or the computer, but I actually like this USB microphone. And I like it because it actually has a richer sound, more like a radio show. They're easy, compact, and you can take them with you wherever you go. Now, here's the thing. You can get started with your podcast with just an audio file. So while I think these microphones are great,
So if anyone's feeling intimidated by audio, this just means by taking a good, clean recording using your smartphone or some of the other devices that she's just mentioned now, with potentially spending a little bit on the equipment. It's not essential, but you can have recorded audio that you can then upload, is what she's saying. So, don't think this is more complicated. It's about creating something that's interesting and engaging for a target audience. And we're going to show you how to plan for all that sort of stuff too as the video progresses as well. Okay.
you need is to just start recording. I do think that it's great when you have different pieces of gear that can level up the podcast, but really what you need to do is just get started. Now, if you want to be interviewing guests or you want to have more of a pro setup, I'm actually going to link a video below where Omar from the Think Media team did a video about how to record 2 people at the same time. It levels you up from these 2 options, but if it's something you want to do, I highly recommend that you check out that video. So step number 1 was gear, and step number 2 is recording and editing. Really, podcasting is...
If anyone's put off by the word editing, this just means kind of chopping up and making what you've recorded perfect rather than potentially having it still with some errors. Yeah. So these days, a lot of this can be done, especially using smartphones intuitively, just using touch screen. Yeah. Touch this bit, want to get rid of that bit between there and then there, delete. Yeah. And if anyone's watched content on YouTube before, you'll notice there's little parts where it doesn't flow perfectly and it stops and starts quickly. That's where an edit has occurred. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful to share that.
Not hard, but it's just making a few simple decisions at the beginning so that you can have success with your podcast as you start to grow. Now we need to get into the recording and the editing. You need to decide, are you recording onto your smartphone or are you recording into your computer? If you're using your smartphone, I recommend downloading a free app called Ferrite. This app will help you to just record directly into it, and you'll have an audio file that you can then use to upload later on. If you are using your computer like I am right now, you want to make sure that you select the right input. Computers don't normally select the microphone that you want to automatically, so you want to make sure you go into your settings and select the microphone that you have plugged in. Second, once you've selected the right microphone, you want to actually do an audio test. Make sure that you're not peaking, which means that your audio is too loud, or that it's too low. That will mess up your editing.
So this is normally recognized by a signal that goes up into the red. The picture that was showed on the screen there didn't show that, but you can see when audio has peaked or clipped. And the downside of this, it will be too large basically and be bigger than the screen. So I don't know if you knocked a phone on a table, for example, or you knocked it with your hand, you will see this big clip. Well, it's exactly the same if you use a loud noise with your mouth, for example, like a B, P, or an S. Those will particularly create bigger spikes in your audio, which it looks like this funny little earthquake reading going across the screen like this. But again, there's loads of stuff you can do to help yourself with that. And again, worst case scenario, you can always edit or try and take it again. So one thing we're going to encourage, especially from Gold Seal Project's perspective, a lot of this stuff can be done what we call on the fly. So you don't script too much and you kind of make it all natural as you're doing it. And because you can then go back and edit, so kind of chop and make the changes that you want, this makes the process a lot easier overall to do it without necessarily having to do a script. You're not filming a film or a perfect stage show. You're doing something informative off the cuff that you can do. And like I say, YouTube has kind of brought the benchmark down for perfectly polished content, which people now quite like it when it's a bit rough and raw with, kind of like just quick little skits to one bit as an edit. So again, don't beat yourself up about the format of the content too much. It is quite easy to put this all together. And as you've heard, this could be done just using the voice note recorder function on your phone to start off with. So really not hard to capture audio podcasts at all.
In post-production. So you want to make sure that you do a few different audio tests. Just say anything into the microphone, testing. But I recommend that you actually talk like you're going to talk into the microphone. One mistake that we see people make is they'll talk at like a normal level.
This is something really. So if you're going to have quite an outspoken show and people have got lots of like passionate opinions about what they think and what's going on, you're probably going to want to put the microphone a little bit further away from that, so that when people are getting loud and vocal, that's not creating that clip that she was talking about before, where it goes into the red, and it kind of causes this big spike across the screen rather than a nice delicate little accent. Anyone that's done recording or engineered in the studio before will know this is a big part. So you normally try and get the artist to be as loud as possible and make sure that your recording level doesn't go. And if they're quieter than that, that everything's kind of covered with that. It's exactly the same concept. The difficulty when you do stuff live here is people might start off really quiet, and as the energy and debate gets more heated, it's getting louder. So as she said here, always test your maximal volume with people shouting at the beginning before you start doing recordings, because there's nothing worse than having gold in terms of recorded content, but you can't listen to it because it's got this horrible distortion occurring because the sound wasn't recorded far enough away or too close, for example. Yeah.
Level. So if I were to talk at a normal level, it would be like this, like if we were having a conversation. But if I'm actually going to put some enthusiasm into my voice like I am right now, I project it further. So you want to make sure that you are talking into the microphone the way that you're going to be producing your podcast. And now, my friend, it's time for you to press record. Hopefully you've scripted out your podcast and you know what you're going to say. But now we need to capture the audio file into an actual piece of software. There's one that I recommend if you're using PC only, which is Audacity. This is a super simple user-free software that all you need to do is just press record and it'll capture your audio file for you. Now, if you're using a Mac, you have two different options.
We'll share a link for how to find Audacity at the end of the seminar and in the Word document that we always share for these seminars, okay?
Use GarageBand, which is another free software that comes with your Mac, or you can actually use Audacity on that as well. So either one of those are great, simple, and easy software for you to get started with your podcast. What I love about this software also is that not only can you record into them, but you can also do your editing inside of them as well. Now, as a creator, it's up to you if you want to do one take all the way through and keep things like ums and mistakes, or you can do like I do and cut out some dead space and some mishaps when I am talking through a podcast. So both of those pieces of software are great for doing that. You just want to make sure that when you export or you're done with your project, that you export it as an MP3 file. You're going to want to save it to your desktop, because then we're going to jump into number 3, which is the hosting and distribution of your podcast. Now, hosting just basically means, where does your podcast live? Where do you upload it to the internet so that it can then go out to the world? We love to use Buzzsprout, and we've worked with them for this video because it's such a simple and easy software. We love Buzzsprout because it's so easy to create and publish your podcast to every major podcasting platform, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and so much more. It also gives you analytics across those different platforms so you can make better podcast episodes for your listener. So now that you have your MP3 file, the next thing is to actually upload it to the software. So when you do that, you're going to want to put in your title and description and give Buzzsprout and the world as much information as you can about what your episode is about. Next is going to require your podcast settings. So what does your artwork look like and your name of your podcast? You'll want
Again, if you need help to do your artwork, remember we have a seminar specifically about how to use your smart devices to be able to create creative media. So obviously artwork for a podcast would come as part of that. So there's a whole seminar to help you to be able to do that at no cost again.
Want to make sure you have these things dialed in before you get started. So have those in a separate file ready to be uploaded. And then third is the directories. Where do you want your podcast to go? To iTunes, to Spotify, to Google Podcasts? You'll have to select those so you know where you want your podcast to go when you upload that first episode. And that's all you need. You just need the gear. You need to record it and edit your podcast and then distribute it to the world. And here's the thing. You just have to get started. Don't think too much about what's the artwork look like or did that sound good. This is the first of many podcast episodes that you're going to record, and I just want to encourage you to just get started. You know, podcasting is taking off, and it really does help you build that relationship with your audience. I love the version of audio podcasting only because it just allows you to not have to set up the video camera and get pretty to do your podcast, but you can just start recording today. But if you're like, Heather, I'm ready to do a video podcast and distribute it to more places, put it on YouTube and have clips for social media, well, then you definitely want to check out our podcasting playlist that Omar did here at Think Media. This video podcasting playlist is the exact blueprint that we used here at Think Media to grow our podcasting to one of the fastest growing marketing podcasts in the world today. So make sure you check out that playlist if you want to go deeper on video podcasting. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.